Welcome back everyone to my brand new 2023 beginner sport bike buyer's guide video. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I worked very hard to make this video the most comprehensive comparison I can for you guys so you can make the most informed decision on which bike you would like to buy. We will only be comparing small displacement sport bikes in this segment. Anyway, let's introduce our 5 contestants. The first will be the Kawasaki Ninja 400. The Ninja is our largest contender we will be comparing today. Powered by a 399cc parallel twin engine, this bike has modern day styling and a bunch of power for a little bike. For reliability, performance, and pedigree, the Ninja 400 will be very tough to beat. Our next bike is the beloved Honda CBR600RR. This Honda is powered by a 286cc single-cylinder engine. The Honda has styling based off of the Fireblade, making this little CBR age very well. Although it's certainly not the fastest on this list, it may just be the easiest to ride with the low 30.7-inch seat height with a very light curb weight of just 364 pounds and low MSRP. Another bike certainly worthy of consideration is our next bike on this list, the Yamaha R3. Powered by a 321cc parallel twin engine, the R3 packs a little punch and is one of the easiest bikes to live with on this list given how well-rounded it is. The R3 is one of the most popular bikes over the last decade. And our next bike on this list will be the Suzuki GSX14R. As the name suggests, the Suzuki is the smallest bike here we'll be comparing today, featuring a 249cc parallel twin engine. What this bike lacks in power, it more than makes up for in fuel economy. The GSX14R has the best fuel range in the whole group and can go over 300 miles on a full tank. This is seriously impressive. Being a 249cc bike, it will be the perfect choice for anyone that wants to learn how to ride on the least intimidating option on this list. And last but certainly not least is the only bike we will be comparing today that is from Europe, and that is the KTM RC390. The RC390 lives its best life on the track. Featuring a very aggressive angular design scheme and higher end suspension and braking components, the RC390 is a seriously impressive contender. This bike stands apart from the rest with high-end technology and exclusive features that we will discuss later on in this video. The single-cylinder 373cc engine makes a great amount of low-end power and torque. The last major update was in 2021 and KTM pulled no punches when they brought this bike to the market, as it is clearly one of the best setup bikes in the whole segment and is loved by riders of all skill levels, not just beginners. Okay, so now that the introductions are out of the way, it's time for me to explain how this is going to work. I'm going to be rating each of these bikes on a scale from 1 to 5. The bike with the best performance, for instance, will score a 5, and the bike with the second best will score a 4, and so on. I will be comparing 5 categories which are as followed: performance, practicality, aesthetics, features, and value. After all is said and done, I will tally up the scores and reveal the bikes from worst to best and explain why they got the score that I gave them. With all that said, let's jump right in. So let's start with performance, but of course it's not only about horsepower. We will also be comparing torque, curb weight, and power to weight ratio of each bike, and I will also include performance parameters such as 0 to 60 times, quarter mile, and top speed. I'm going to start this list in descending order. So in first place, scoring 5 points, we have the Kawasaki Ninja 400. With the largest engine on this list, it comes to no surprise that the Ninja 400 held its own in this competition. Making 49 horsepower and 28 pound-feet of torque out of its 399cc parallel twin engine, the Ninja 400 also only weighs 366 pounds, giving it a power-to-weight ratio of 7.47, which is the best out of the whole group. And in second place, we have the KTM RC390. The KTM may be the second largest engine, being 373 cc's. However, it is not a parallel twin like the Ninja. It is a single cylinder. The RC390 is listed as having 43 horsepower and 27 pound-feet of torque. It also only weighs 362 pounds, giving it a power-to-weight ratio of 8.42. This impressive little KTM has earned itself 4 points. And in third place, we have the Yamaha R3. Again, the R3 gets third place, and unsurprisingly it has the third largest engine at 321 cc's, and the R3 is a parallel twin similar to the Ninja. Being a parallel twin, it just narrowly lost to the RC390. Featuring 42 horsepower and 22 pound-feet of torque, it's important to know that the R3 makes a lot less power than the RC390 in the low and mid-range RPM, so the RC390 will feel much faster than just 1 extra horsepower, especially given how it has 5 more pound-feet of torque. However, the most surprising thing about the R3 is that it has a 375 pound curb weight, giving the R3 a power to weight ratio of 8.93, thus placing it directly in the middle of the competition, earning 3 points. Now, fourth place is the CBR600R. Featuring a 286cc single-cylinder engine, the CBR is our first bike here under 300cc despite its name. The CBR makes 30 horsepower and 20 pound-feet of torque. A lot less than any of the bikes listed so far, the CBR is fairly lightweight at 364 pounds for the ABS model, giving it a power to weight ratio of 12.13, which disappointingly lands the CBR in fourth place, earning just 2 points. And finally, we gotta talk about last place. The Suzuki GSX-250R plummets so far down into the basement of this competition with its 248cc parallel twin engine, making just 24 horsepower and 16 pound-feet of torque. Not only that, but despite Suzuki having the smallest motor in this competition, it actually weighs the most too, at 399 pounds, giving it a power to weight ratio of 16.63. The GSX-250R earns 1 point by default, and here I would like to justify these power numbers with real-time numbers of each bike. I want to point out that these numbers are all variable to rider skill, but I use the same source to determine all of these numbers, and that is motostats.com. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but they have tons of good information on each of these bikes and their performance. I highly recommend you check them out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Anyway, I'm going to post up the performance numbers right here, and as you can see, the Ninja is a clear winner with a 4.07 second 0 to 60 time, a 13-second quarter-mile time, and a top speed of 118 miles per hour. Suzuki comes in a league all on its own in the worst way possible, a 9-second 0 to 60 time, a 16-second quarter-mile time, and a limited top speed of 85 miles per hour. This Suzuki is outclassed by the second worst bike on this list, the Honda. I really wish I could give Suzuki 0 points because the performance is abysmal. Even the old carbureted Ninja 250s were faster than this bike. Okay, we spent a long time on performance, so I think it's time for us to shift gears and move on to the next category, and that is practicality. I like this category a lot because despite how fast a bike is, if it is uncomfortable to ride or difficult to pick up, then it will be tough on new riders. Now, I am fairly short at 5'8", so I factor in seat height a lot when picking out a bike and being comfortable on it. If you are a taller person, let's just say 6 foot or above, then none of these options will be a bad option for you. In fact, you might actually prefer the taller seat. But for most new riders, I say always err on the side of a shorter seat height because it will make you feel the most comfortable. So as you can see the seat heights of these bikes, you have the lowest ones as the R3 and CBR300R with a 30.7 inch, and then they go up by about 0.2 inches for the Ninja 400 and then the GSX-250R to 31.1. But to put things into perspective, I am again 5'8", and my CBR600RR has a 23.3 inch seat height, and I'm extremely comfortable on it, which is almost the exact same seat height as the KTM RC390. So somebody my height would be fine on all bikes. Now, if you're even shorter than me, maybe let's say 5'4" or less, then I think you should probably avoid the KTM. But it's not just about seat height, it's also about bar height, and as you can see, all 4 Japanese bikes have taller bars, which makes them relatively more comfortable than the KTM, which has them just a tad bit lower. However, I do want to point out that the KTM's clip-ons are adjustable, which is awesome. You can move them up 10 millimeters taller, which isn't a ton, but it's something, and really cool that KTM has that adjustability. That is not common. I also like to include other factors into this category like fuel efficiency, because that's actually very practical. And as badly as I bash Suzuki in the performance segment, with 76 miles per gallon fuel economy and a very large 4-gallon tank, Suzuki claims you can achieve up to 304 miles per tank on the Suzuki GSX-250R. That is a very strong number. I'm also happy to report that all of these bikes have a fuel gauge. However, the Honda is the only one here that doesn't have a gear indicator, and because of that, I am docking a point off of the Honda. I am also factoring reliability as well. Of course, there's no way to really tell how reliable something will be, but I went ahead and did as much research as I could, and I can pretty much conclude that all 4 Japanese bikes here are pretty rock solid. The KTM RC390 might be a different story. I haven't seen much of this latest generation, but it is still fairly new, and I know in the past with these previous generation RC390s, they were all types of issues, so I think it's safe to say that you'd be better off with any of the Japanese bikes if practicality is most important to you. The KTM will always be a bit of a gamble. And I know some of you may push back on this, but I'm gonna have to dock Suzuki another point for having over a 9-second 0 to 60 time. There's just no excuse for that in the modern age. Even minivans will go 0 to 60 quicker than that. Power isn't usually weighed in here and doesn't help any of the other bikes, but I will say that it has to weigh in on the Suzuki, and they deserve this penalty in this category as well, given just how truly terrible it is. Unless you use the Suzuki in only the city environments and nowhere else, you will notice the lack of power and it's gonna bother you. So with all that said, in first place I have the Ninja 400. With its low seat height, impressive fuel economy, good reliability, and a decent gauge cluster setup, the Ninja is a very practical bike to live with. And in second place we have the Honda CBR600R. Hondas are known for being very practical machines and are extremely reliable. Honda might have competed with the Kawasaki, but unfortunately I had to dock Honda a point for having no gear indicator, and honestly just having an ugly gauge cluster in general, but it still earns enough to get second place given the Honda 4 points. And in third place, the Suzuki GSX-250R. I had to dock another point from Suzuki because of the weight. Again, I hate to add performance into this category because usually I don't do that, but this GSX-250R weighs a hair under 400 pounds. That's ridiculous. There's almost the same weight as my 2008 CBR600RR, and the weight is something you will notice. And not even just when riding, but when you're trying to park the bike or moving it around the garage, you will notice that weight. And I'm docking Suzuki for it in terms of practicality because a heavier bike is usually not as practical as a lightweight bike. I know Suzuki fans will not be happy about this, but you get third place in this category. And in fourth place, we have the Yamaha R3. It really suffers from its fuel economy. The 56 miles per gallon is really surprising. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me how it gets that low of fuel economy. The Yamaha does have an easy to read gauge cluster and a nice low seat height and is a proven to be a reliable vehicle. If the fuel economy does not matter that much to you, then maybe the Yamaha would be in a higher place, maybe in third or second. But we must be fair and give Honda and Suzuki the nod over Yamaha here. Yamaha gets 2 points. And in last place, earning just 1 point, is the KTM. The KTM is a tall, track-focused bike and not as reliable as the other options. It does have a beautiful TFT display and some really awesome features, but reliability is always going to weigh in the heaviest on practicality, because if your bike is broken, then nothing else even matters. KTM, unsurprisingly, is just the least practical bike here. For aesthetics, I have my own opinions, but because I want to leave myself completely blameless here, I've decided to post up a poll on my channel a couple days ago, and I had you guys vote on which bikes you guys thought was the best looking. And with over 1,200 votes, here are the results. In last place, we have the GSX-250R getting just 4% of the vote. This comes at no surprise to me. The Suzuki just doesn't look all that nice. The big singular center mounted headlight has never done Suzuki any favors. Other than that though, there really isn't anything wrong with the looks of the Suzuki, but just as much as there's nothing wrong with it, there's really nothing going right with it either. And it earns just 2 points, and you'll see why in a minute. And in fourth place, we have the Honda CBR600RR. This one is actually kind of surprising to me, earning only 7% of the vote. The CBR didn't perform very well at all. I always kind of admired the styling of the CBR. It sort of reminds me of the mini Fireblade, and I always found that to be cool. If it were up to me, the Honda would be a little bit higher on this list. I think the design may just be getting a little bit old and stale for the community though, which makes sense why it was voted number 4 and only earns 3 points. Next up is a tie, and yes, that's why the points have been a little messed up in this category. I still can't believe we've had 1,200 voters and we ended up with a tie at 23% each, and that's the KTM and the Yamaha. Both bikes are really good looking. The Yamaha seems to be a fan favorite with its classic look and design. I especially like it in blue. But I have to admit the KTM is my favorite looking bike here. It's easily the most polarizing with a strange KTM design scheme. It is similar to the Suzuki with the singular headlight, and in my opinion it's sort of growing on me, but I'm still not in love with it. I do prefer the front end to the previous model, however the side view of the RC390 is simply beautiful, especially in the orange and black theme. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this color scheme really makes me want to get this bike. Both of these bikes deserve 4 points. And in first place is the Kawasaki. I'm not surprised the Kawasaki won, but I am surprised it won by so much. Earning 43% of the votes, it easily beat out everything else. Kawasaki played it safe with their design, so there's nothing really offensive about it like the KTM or Suzuki. And it's relatively new and fresh looking, unlike the Honda or Yamaha. I would still put the KTM in front of it if this was my opinion only, but my opinion doesn't matter here, yours does, and that's why Kawasaki gets first place, earning it 5 points. And next up is features. This will mostly look into the technology and of course their gauge clusters. So comfortably in last place is Honda. Honda offers ABS and a fuel gauge and not much else in terms of features. Honda, you get 1 point here. Suzuki is in 4th place, earning just 2 points, and it barely deserves 4th place. The gauge cluster on the Suzuki is not that great. I hate the digital tachometer, but the GSX250R has a gear indicator, and although their gauge cluster doesn't look super modern, it also doesn't look like it was built 30 years ago like the Hondas. And in 3rd place, we have Kawasaki. I do actually really like Kawasaki's gauge cluster, but it's starting to look a bit old. The Kawasaki has a slipper clutch, which is nice, and it barely gives it the nod over the Suzuki here, netting the Kawasaki 3 points. And in 2nd place is Yamaha, earning itself 4 points thanks to its LCD screen and easy to read clear information. I want to admit that I still prefer the Ninjas over the Yamahas, but I've decided to give the Yamaha the nod here because it also has inverted forks, which is a nice feature to have, especially in this class. However, Yamaha doesn't have a slipper clutch and the Kawasaki does, so depending on which feature matters most to you, you will probably change who are in 2nd place. But no matter how nice I can be, no bike in this category could even touch the KTM RC390, comfortably sitting in 1st place, earning a well-deserved 5 points. The KTM took no prisoners in this category. The RC390 is the only bike here to feature a full-color TFT display. It also allows for pairing to your phone to your bike. You can change your ABS system to on or off or even supermoto mode, which will disable ABS for the rear only so you can slide the rear end out. Speaking of ABS, the KTM RC390 is the only bike here to offer cornering ABS. This means that ABS will actually work while you're leaned over, which is a superbike feature finding its way here in the beginner segment. KTM also offers an optional up and down quick shifter for just an extra $180 charge. The RC390 also has an ambient light sensor to automatically change your TFT from daytime to nighttime. You also have, as mentioned before, adjustable clip-ons and foldable mirrors. It also has inverted forks and a slipper clutch. There's not a single feature any of the other bikes have that the RC390 doesn't have. I wish I could give the RC more points because honestly it deserves it. And finally, our last category is value. Make no mistake, value is the most important category, especially when comparing bikes in the beginner bike segment. People often ask me what makes a good beginner bike, and I always have 2 answers, and that is cost and forgiveness. You want a cheap bike that is also forgiving. That way you're less likely to crash. However, if you do crash, it won't cost you a lot of money to fix it. Anyway, and last place is the Suzuki GSX-250R. Suzuki has no power and looks terrible. There are no special features the Suzuki can provide, and coming in at $4,999, it's cheap, but not that much cheaper than the rest, earning it last place. And in fourth place is the Honda. Again, Honda is suffering from the same problem as Suzuki. Both are reliable bikes, but so isn't the Yamaha and Kawasaki. And the Honda makes bad horsepower and is cheap, but not that cheap either. Only $600 separates the Honda from the Kawasaki, and the Kawasaki is so much more bike than the Honda. And in third place is the Yamaha, also a victim of Kawasaki simply outclassing it. Yamaha does better than the Honda though, with a much newer looking gauge cluster, and at the cost of just $400 more, the Yamaha offers much more power and is considered a better looking bike than the Honda. And in second place is the Kawasaki, making 49 horsepower at the cost of $5,699 for ABS. Kawasaki has decent features, awesome power, and although it's the most expensive Japanese bike, it's well worth the few extra bucks. And in first place is the KTM. I know it's the most expensive, coming in at $6,079 if you opt for the additional quick shifter, but if you don't, the standard price is $5,899. It is impossible to argue that you are not getting your money's worth with the KTM. You get cornering ABS, traction control, full color TFT, you get great low end and mid-range power, and you have a great looking bike that's ready to go on the track. All of this just for a $200 premium over the Kawasaki, and you're not even taking that big of a hit on performance on the top end either. The KTM is the best valued bike here, and so with all that said, it's time for us to decide who is the winner. I have taken everything into consideration and tried to do this as fair as possible. And with that said, in last place, earning a very pathetic 9 points, is predictably the Suzuki GSX-250R. The GSX-250R is just outclassed by everything. In fact, it is so bad that I don't even know if the Suzuki should be even in this class, or should it be in a class with scooters, given how badly it has performed. Not only that, but it may be one of the cheapest bikes here for $5,000, but you are far better spending the extra money on something a little bit more respectable like the R3 or Ninja 400. Even though the Suzuki has a great fuel economy, it isn't enough to rise it above last place. In fourth place, earning 12 points, the Honda CBR600RR. I do really like the way this bike looks, and I know it doesn't make good power, but around the city it would be a nice bike to have. Even though it doesn't make great power, it at least has a respectable amount of power with a 0 to 60 of 6 seconds. Fuel economy and reliability are outstanding. Overall, this bike isn't terrible, but it's old looking, especially the gauge cluster. I really hate the cluster, and with the absence of a gear indicator, I'm not sure why anybody would pick this bike over the others unless you found a great deal, or vastly prefer the CBR's looks over the rest. This bike would be best for a new rider that doesn't plan on doing much highway and really wants to stay close to city and doing short distances. So that leads us to third place, and this is where it starts to get tough. In third place, we have the Yamaha R3, earning 16 points. The Yamaha is a good looking bike with a nice looking gauge cluster. I love that it has inverted forks, and the R3 is as reliable as they come. Making 42 horsepower, you can ride this bike on the highway or back roads no problem. Has good power and will be a fun bike to learn on. And now we are down to the last two, the KTM or the Kawasaki. Which one is the best? And scoring an amazing 22 points, the best beginner bike for 2023 is the Kawasaki Ninja 400. The Ninja 400 makes the most power. The Ninja 400 was rated the best looking in the class by you guys with an outstanding landslide victory. The Ninja is the most practical, has a decent amount of features, and is overall a good price at $5,699 with ABS. It's one of the #1 choices at the track for any new track rider. Being cheap and reliable, it's hard to fault the Kawi at any point. As a new rider, it is the clear and obvious choice for anyone to start on, and that's why it gets first place in this beginner bike buyer's guide. However, I want to spend a moment on second place. As a beginner rider, the Kawasaki is the best option. However, if I were to choose any of these bikes, it would be the RC390, and here's why. Even though the RC390 doesn't make as much power as the Ninja, I prefer single cylinders over parallel twins, especially at low displacements like this one. And in my opinion, the KTM looks better than the Kawasaki. And I know the KTM has the worst practicality out of all these, but as someone who owns a bunch of bikes already, I would never take the KTM to work with me or do any kind of touring or commuting. It would only be just a weekend warrior bike or a track bike, and in terms of features and value, nothing in this list even comes close. The RC390 has cornering ABS, traction control, a full color TFT display, the ability to turn on supermoto mode or turn off ABS as a whole. The RC390 has superior suspension, superior braking. I know the reliability could be hit or miss, but like I said, I would be going to the track with it, so it's not like I'd be putting a ton of miles on it anyway, and you can just pay extra for a warranty and then you'll be okay there. Either way, the Ninja 400 may be the best beginner bike out here, but the RC390 is my #1 choice. And with all that said, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching and making it to the end of this video. I spent a ton of time on this, so if you enjoyed it or found it helpful, then please do me a huge favor and throw me a like. It will help me tremendously and allow me to continue producing content just like this. Thanks again, everyone, and no matter which bike you choose, I'm glad to have you on the road riding, so keep the 2 wheels down and be safe and have fun. Take care, and bye-bye.
It's a sick news, pull your little arrows out. Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look